majority special teams. I saw his situational awareness. I saw his attention to detail. I saw his ability to motivate the players, how to get the guys together. Because in the NFL, nobody really wants to play special teams. You want to play offense or defense. You want to make your name on those types of things. And so they have to be able to, the special teams coordinators have to be able to bring the guys together, to motivate them, to get them ready to play. John Harbaugh was able to do that. And so I guess the Giants are saying Joe Judge probably has that same skill, because the special teams for the Patriots has won them a few games this past season. They played well in the past as well, and so they have to be looking at that. Here's the big difference between the situation that John Harbaugh walks into and the situation that Joe Judge walks into. Doesn't have Ed Reed. Doesn't have Ray Lewis, 2 Hall of Famers. Doesn't have Terrell Suggs, potentially a Hall of Famer. Most importantly, he doesn't have Ozzie Newsome, who is the best GM in football at this point in time. And so these are the questions that they're going to have to answer after they hire Joe Judge. Big-time questions in New York. To me, there's 2 discussions about this. One is about the person, Joe Judge. I don't know Joe Judge. I'm very happy for him. From all reports, he's worked incredibly hard. He has learned under Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, and the Patriots unit, to me, that was the most standout, impressive, head and shoulders better than everyone else in the league, aside from their kicking part of it, was their special teams last year. They were the best pump blocking team I can ever remember. Jerry Jones had a damn near meltdown after that game because Joe Judge's special teams units gave Jason Garrett's special teams units such fits in that game. And I do think, as a general rule, special teams coordinators should get more opportunities, because what I have heard from people who played for John Harbaugh talk about how he was able to take a holistic approach to the team, not focus on one side of the ball, and how that helped them. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad hire. It's a risky hire. The Giants are putting themselves in a position where somehow they could be on another new head coach in a couple years, so maybe it's not the hire I would have made. But Joe Judge, good for him. I'm happy for him. The other conversation is, it is so frustrating that people that look like Joe Judge are the only people that get to take this career path. That we are in a league that is over 60% black and less than 10% of the coaches are black. And he became Joe Judge because it's like, wait, who? He became the poster boy for this. This is not his fault. And by the way, the Giants are allowed to hire on an individual basis whomever they want. This is not the Giants' fault. It is just another reminder that there's a systemic problem in this league when it comes to giving non-white guys opportunities to be head coaches. And we can go down the list. Yeah, of course, Eric Bieniemy should be a top candidate. Doug Peterson was Andy Reid's right-hand man. He got a job. Matt Nagy was his right-hand man. He got a job. Eric Bieniemy is his right-hand man for the best offense Andy Reid's ever had. And all of a sudden, it's a problem. Well, Andy calls the plays. Wasn't no problem for Peterson. Wasn't no problem for Nagy. Byron Leftwich. He takes Jameis Winston. Had more passing yards this year than any quarterback in the history of football not named Peyton, Breeze, Brady, or Roethlisberger. He's not even considered. Leslie Frazier took a team with Christian Ponder as the quarterback to the postseason. He's been relegated to be a coordinator for damn near a decade, since one bad year after that. And for folks that want to say, oh, you want them to just hire a token candidate, or you don't want them to hire the best person for the job. Again, this is not about Joe Judge. He might have been the best person. But the assumption that you could have the demographics of the league and end with the demographics of the coaching staffs and have that only be a meritocracy is so, to me, wildly ignorant. What would we think if all of a sudden 30% of NHL coaches were black? We'd be like, well, that is peculiar, considering the fact that the vast majority of players are not. And this is not just an NFL problem. It's an NBA problem. It is an American corporate issue of black people and non-white people not getting opportunities of leadership. And it ultimately comes from the inherent assumption, whether people want to admit it or not, that many people have, which is, I can trust you to play for me. I can trust you on the defensive side of the ball to motivate guys. I can trust you to be an emotional a leader. But when it comes to the thinking man spots, I don't know. I'd rather take a chance on this kid, or I'd rather take a chance on this college coach than turn the reins over to a black person. And it's incredibly frustrating. And I think the league has done a lot to try to fix it, but you need the actual owners to be invested in fixing it. Brian, in the last 20 years, over 25% of the black head coaches we've had in this league, and there's only been 18 of them, have come from Tony Dungy's tree. If not for Tony Dungy, there'd be almost none. That is a systemic issue, and I do feel bad that Joe Judge became the face of it because he doesn't deserve to be. But I'd be lying if I didn't admit that's what I thought of when I saw Joe Judge, 38-year-old special teams coordinator, got the job, and not any of the other qualified candidates.
The question has to be asked, why aren't these candidates getting a realistic look? Some of these guys are getting brought in. Eric Bieniemy has been brought in. Byron Leftwich over the next couple of years will continue to get brought in. I think Leslie Frazier, listen, he's taken a very good defense and continues to get better. Why aren't they getting a serious look? That's the question. The Rooney Rule is put in place for a reason, and I think some of these teams have kind of skirted it just a bit. But the real question is, why aren't these guys getting the look? And I think you hit the nail on the head. We're good enough to play. However, the point to being able to lead the other 65, 70% of black men in the locker room, for some teams, they've said, you know what, you're not good enough to do it. I would look directly at Mike Tomlin and say, what has he been to that football team? Because this year, let's just talk about this year, he's taken backup quarterback after backup quarterback and said we still have a chance of making the playoffs. He knows how to lead men. There's other black coaches opportunities out there, and that these guys have the ability to lead black men as well. They should be taken seriously.
Look, maybe Joe Judge is that diamond in the rough. Maybe he's the one guy that you're going to pluck, and he turns out to be the John Harbaugh, if you will. More likely, he was brought in and interviewed and perhaps hired because of his relationship with Bill Belichick and all the great things that have sprung from Bill Belichick. But the Patriots had a terrible wide receiving core last year. And show me where the Bill Belichick tree, besides maybe Vrabel, who is a player, has sprung successful head coaches. I don't see it.
Well, it's a really fair point, Jenna, and I'm glad you mentioned the part about Vrabel, because Vrabel's being lumped into the tree by others.
And he was a player.
He never coached for him.
No.
Vrabel was traded to the Chiefs, coached at Ohio State, and then coached under Bill O'Brien, who some would argue has been the most successful of the Belichick disciples. I would argue our friend Eric Mangini, his record might not show it, but given the teams he coached, I think he could have been an excellent long-term coach in this league. But Charlie Weiss obviously flamed out at multiple levels. Romeo Crennel is not a head coach in this league. I don't feel Matt Patricia is a head coach in this league, but they, of course, fired Jim Caldwell because 9 wins wasn't good enough in 1 year, but 9 wins is plenty good for Vrabel to keep his job in 2 years, which gets back to the other conversation. But people, listen, they ran out of Sean McVay friends to hire, so now it became Bill Belichick coaches. Like, there's been a great way to become a head coach in this league. One way was be Ray Lewis's defensive coordinator. All of those guys got to do it. Yep. And the other was be Tom Brady adjacent. And all of a sudden, and they ran, McDaniels took interviews, Joe Judge got the job, the coordinator, defensive coordinator in back-to-back years in Patriots has gotten the job. And I think Flores might end up being a good coach. I thought Flores did a really good job given his limited weapons, but that is the question. Can you bring what you've learned from New England and install that system elsewhere? And will the team, Brian, give you time to install that system elsewhere?
The time, that's the real point, because there have been opportunities for African-American coordinators to get jobs as coaches. They don't get the same amount of time and opportunity to stay in that job when they have down seasons or seasons that are just not even good. Well, here's the thing. When you talked about Leslie Frazier, you talk about Caldwell as well, they don't get the opportunity to say, you know what, we had an 8-8 year or a 9-7 year. Their expectation has to be 12-4, 11-5 for them to be able to stay in that job. That just isn't fair.
Jim Caldwell went 14-2 into a Super Bowl, then won 10 games, then won 2 games the year Peyton got hurt, got fired, goes to Detroit. Detroit wins 11, 7, 9, and 9.